My name is Raj Reddy, Director of the Animal Law Advanced Degree Program for the Center for Animal Law Studies. And thank you so much for joining us for the Center for Animal Law Studies event to recognize and to celebrate two of the preeminent figures in the animal law field, Professors Henry Mark Holzer and Joyce Tischler, who together laid the foundation for the animal law movement as we know it today, as well as for animal law education and scholarship. As your MC for this evening, I want to take note that this event is being recorded and that a live transcript of our program is available. With that said, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker of the night, the Dean of Lewis and Clark Law School, Jennifer Johnson, who is also the champion of all things animal law related here at Lewis and Clark, and to offer some introductory remarks.
Thank you, Raj. I am unmuted successfully. After a year and a half, I finally figured it out. Thanks to everyone for attending this very special event. And as Lewis and Clark Law School's Dean, I am very proud of our animal law program. And as many of you know, our Center for Animal Law Studies, which we call CALS, is the largest, most robust, and most important animal law program in the world. We now offer a JD certificate in animal law, an animal law LLM, and just this fall, an online animal law LLM, together, of course, with our student-published animal law review and our 2 animal law clinics. The work of our faculty, staff, and the incredible donors who make this work possible is unparalleled, and all of us at the law school are so grateful for the impact of CALS on our students, the field of animal law, and of course the animals. Now it's a rare opportunity to meet and work with any one trailblazer in animal law. So tonight we find ourselves in a very unusual situation. We get to turn our attention to 2 such visionaries. We're so fortunate to honor tonight both Professor Henry Holzer and Professor Joyce Tischler. Now, I have the pleasure of seeing Joyce on campus on a regular basis. And the last time I had the pleasure of meeting with Hank was in Albuquerque, just a couple of months before COVID hit. And that derailed our plans to meet again. And Hank had promised me Santa Fe. So Hank, we will get back together again just as soon as travel is safe. I can't wait to see you again in person. Now, you will be hearing a lot tonight from others about the work of Joyce and the wonderful work of Hank, but I want to say it's not a stretch to state that without these 2, there probably wouldn't be a field of animal law today, or at the very least, it would be much less rich, diverse, and active. So let me just say thank you to Joyce, and thank you to Hank for all you do and all you've done for animal law and animals. And from all of us at Lewis Park Law School, our hearty thank you. We are honored to be with you here tonight, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the evening. So Raj, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Next, I'd like to introduce Pamela Hart, co-author of Animal Law, New Perspectives on Teaching Traditional Law, and Executive Director of the Center for Animal Law Studies, and Assistant Dean of the Animal Law Program.
Thank you, Raj, and welcome everyone. To add to what Dean Johnson said, I'm just so proud of everything that the Center for Animal Law Studies has accomplished to meet its mission of educating the next generation of animal law attorneys and advancing animal protection through the law. And we could not do what we do without brilliant professors and visionary leaders in the field who understand and support this mission. And that's why we're especially grateful to honor 2 such visionaries tonight, Professor Joyce Tischler and Professor Henry Hank Holzer. Both of these educators have changed the lives of their students and through them, the lives of countless animals. We are inspired by their work, and so it is with particular delight this evening that we are honoring both of them. First, we'll start with Professor Joyce Tischler, and I'd like to ask Professor Frosch to give a few remarks about Joyce's impact on the students, the program, the field of animal law, and of course, the animals. Pam?
Thank you, Pam. It is my pleasure to say a few words in honor of Professor Joyce Tischler. Professor Tischler joined Lewis and Clark Law School full-time as a professor of practice in May of 2019. Prior to that, she had been teaching as an adjunct for many years, both at Lewis and Clark and at other institutions. And no surprise, she's a favorite among the students, and for good reason. She brings intelligence, passion, and over 40 years of unparalleled animal law experience to the classroom. So let's take a moment and celebrate the extraordinary career Joyce has had and continues to have. In 1979, only 2 years out of law school, Professor Tischler co-founded the Animal Legal Defense Fund. And ALDF was the first nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting animals through the legal system. And she served as ALDF's executive director for 25 years and as its general counsel until her retirement in the spring of 2019, when she then came to Lewis and Clark. While at ALDF, she conceived of and litigated numerous cutting-edge cases aimed at protecting the interests of animals. And she built the organization to be an advocacy powerhouse with programs in criminal law, civil law, legislation, and legal education. After coming to Lewis and Clark, Joyce has continued her groundbreaking work through the classes she teaches, the books and articles she writes, and the creative approaches she brings to address the thorniest animal law issues, particularly with respect to farm-to-animal issues. It's no exaggeration to say that the students truly love her and are inspired by her example. Given her pivotal role in launching and developing the field, Professor Tischler is affectionately referred to as the mother of animal law. Now, she's learned to live with this moniker somewhat reluctantly, but the title is apt. She has been an uncommon trailblazer and has dedicated her life and her career to improving the lives of animals through the legal system and to animal law education. She is internationally recognized for her work, is a prolific writer of many articles and books in the field, and is a highly sought after animal law speaker across the globe. But on a more personal note, I've known Joyce for 30 years and have worked with or for her as a volunteer, as an ALDF attorney, and as a fellow academic. When I first started out, Joyce took me under her wing and for 30 years has been a mentor and a cherished friend. And I know I'm not the only one who's had this experience. Through the years, Joyce has mentored dozens, if not hundreds, of young lawyers who have since gone on to have extraordinary careers in animal law. And through all of these efforts and her teaching and her scholarship today and into the future, her impact on animal protection, animal rights, and animal law education will be felt for generations to come. So today, through the incredible generosity of the International Society for Animal Rights, we honor Joyce through the creation of a full scholarship in her name. The honor states, International Society for Animal Rights hereby establishes the Joyce Tischler Scholarship for Animal Law Education to honor Professor Joyce Tischler in recognition of her pioneering contributions and tireless efforts to develop the field of animal law and animal law education. So please join me in congratulating Professor Tischler on this very well-deserved honor. Joyce. And now I'd like to turn the podium over to Professor Tischler.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you who are with us for this event. Teaching animal law to law students gives me enormous pleasure, and it is a central part of my legacy in this field. Thus, I'm deeply honored that Professor Henry Mark Holzer and International Society for Animal Rights have chosen to name this scholarship after me. I'd like to talk about Henry Mark Holzer and the significant impact he has had on my life, as well as the first generation of animal rights law attorneys, some of whom are with us here today. Hank's introduction to animal rights started in 1972 when he met Alice Harrington of Friends of Animals. He was shocked when Alice told him about the ritual slaughter exemptions in the Federal Humane Slaughter Act. In his first animal rights law case filed that same year, Hank challenged the constitutionality of those exemptions. That case was Jones versus Butz, a case that today is regularly used to teach animal law students in the US. That's not all that Hank did in 1972. He also delivered a talk titled Lobbying in the Courts at the 13th annual meeting of the Society for Animal Rights, and he talked about the power of courts to create better law for animals, analogizing to the decades of cases brought by the NAACP. As reported in the November 1972 report from the Society for Animal Rights, a blueprint for animals' protection emerged from that meeting as a result of Hank's guidance. In 1972, I was in my second year of college and had no idea that any of this had taken place. Hank's second lawsuit was Jones versus Beame. In that case, which is also frequently taught in law schools, Hank represented Helen Jones and other individuals and organizations, and he argued that the cruel mistreatment of animals in New York City zoos due to a financial fiscal crisis violated several statutes. But a more direct impact came in the form of a nationally based 16-page written communication called the Animal Rights Law Reporter, which was published by ISAR and edited by Henry Mark Holzer from 1980 to 1983. Hank seemingly searched out anyone even mildly interested in animal rights law and added each of us to that list. The Animal Rights Law Reporter was, or should have been, required reading for those of us just starting to practice animal law. It included swibs about cases in the federal and state courts, proposed federal and state legislation, administrative rulemaking, relevant books and articles, available resources, and a bulletin board to inform us about new organizations, meetings, events, and conferences. In case anyone needs a reminder, the Animal Rights Law Reporter was published long before there was anything called the internet, email, cell phones, or social media. In those days, we communicated by phone, which was expensive, and by letters. The other groundbreaking event came on November 27th to 28th of 1981, the very first conference of animal rights attorneys and law students, once again organized by Hank Holzer and ISAR. And to quote Hank in the editor's comment in the January 1982 edition of Animal Rights Law Reporter, because I can't state it any more eloquently, quote, "It was magic. One's discovery that there were others in the legal profession who shared some of your deepest values, the sense of solidarity arising from open discussion of those values and how to protect and implement them through law. The intellectual excitement as speaker after speaker explained how the law could be enlisted in the widening battle for animal rights. The feeling that something could indeed be done about the virtually endless problems that animals confront. The satisfaction that speaker and attendee alike experienced merely from being part of what was happening. The strengthened ability which resulted from exposure to challenging new ideas. The knowledge gained. The awareness that everyone there stood at the threshold of something brand new. For those 2 days at least, frustration took a backseat to hope." Quote. Hank concluded this comment by writing, "One thing is very clear indeed. The animal rights law movement is an idea whose time is now." Thank you, Hank. Thank you for bringing us together, serving as the nexus of this movement in its earliest and most fragile days, and for inspiring us over and over. We honor you for your dedication to and leadership in establishing a movement that would pursue legal rights for non-human animals. And now I'd like to hear from Hank.
Having heard Professor Tischler's kind words, I'm overwhelmed and most grateful. She mentioned Alice Harrington, founder of Friends of Animals. So I'm going to tell you a story about Alice and me and the beginning of animal law. I started teaching con law at Brooklyn Law School in the fall of '72. About that time, I got a solicitation from Friends of Animals. Alice was raising money to fight the baby seal problem on the Canada ice floes, where monsters were going out and clubbing to death baby seals because their coats were still white. And I guess I sent her a donation in a Brooklyn Law School envelope. Well, I mean, this was manna with a check. This was manna from heaven. A law professor who sent money. So she invited me to dinner, and at dinner, as Joyce Tischler has just said, she told me about the Federal Humane Slaughter Act, and she told me about the kosher exemption. And I told her right off the bat that the exemptions were unconstitutional under the First Amendment's free exercise and establishment clauses. Well, one thing led to the other. She said maybe Friends of Animals could help with a lawsuit. She invited me to talk to her board of directors. I did, and they were scared of being anti-Semites, even in those days, and said, in effect, thanks, but no thanks. Somehow I obtained a film showing livestock slaughter, the shackling and hoisting. And of course, it was sheer barbarism. And I was outraged. I mean, for me, it was a double header. It was unconstitutional under two provisions of the First Amendment, and it was cruel and barbaric, almost beyond belief. So then came the first Butz case. Now, some of you out there who may know of that case may be surprised that there were two. Yes, indeed, there were two Butz cases. After Alice and Friends of Animals and the film, and this gnawing at me and not being able to find anybody who was willing to be a plaintiff and help, I commenced the case myself. Somewhere in the bowels of the Southern District Federal Court in New York, there's a complaint that's entitled Henry Mark Holzer against the Secretary of Agriculture. I sued in my own name. People contacted me, they offered help. There was only one condition. Of course, you can now know what that was. As long as they could be anonymous, no fingerprints. I rejected the offers such as they were. One day I got a call, a woman named Helen Jones, and she said she was with Society for Animal Rights and she was aware of the case I had brought. And by then I was so burned out, hearing from people who wanted to help but wouldn't. I was, let's say, impolite. And she interrupted me and she said, no, Professor Holzer, you have it wrong. I don't know about those people, but I want to help. And she added that she had been looking for a lawyer to do this for 10 years. So I discontinued my case, thankfully. I had no business really doing it in the first place. I was just so angry, I couldn't help myself. I discontinued with prejudice. And SAR, as ISAR was then called, helped enormously. They recruited plaintiffs. I told them what I needed. And we wound up with about 10 plaintiffs, 12 maybe, representing different interests, vegans, non-vegans, Jews, not Jews, etc. The last plaintiff you'll be interested to hear was the following, quote, all livestock now or hereafter awaiting slaughter in the United States, end quote. Because I was challenging a federal statute, I got a 3-judge district court in the Southern District of New York. They wrote a lengthy opinion. And by the way, they recognized standing to sue, although they weren't very specific about whom among all those plaintiffs had standing. Under the law at that time, because I had a decision from a 3-judge federal district court on a federal constitutional issue, I had an of right appeal, not certiorari, where I'm knocking on the door trying to get in, and where 4 votes out of 9 are required. This was an appeal as of right. I had a right to be there, and I had a right to a decision on the merits. So as soon as it hit the Supreme Court, various Jewish organizations came in against me, trying to protect kosher slaughter, which is, of course, treif and unacceptable. They didn't care. Time magazine called me a Jewish atheist. The amici curiae put in briefs in support of the statute's exemptions. They reproduced the Nuremberg laws, which under Nazi Germany prohibited kosher slaughter. They even reproduced the appendices in a Gothic face. In other words, I was a Nazi. In the Supreme Court, they made a motion to dismiss. On what grounds? On the grounds that there was no substantial federal constitutional issue, despite my having invoked the First Amendment's religion clauses, free exercise and establishment. It was cowardly. It's not surprising. I had a right to be there. I had a right to a merits decision. The issue had a right to a decision. But they granted a motion to dismiss the complaint. However, that said, Butz 2 was the first case in US history to use the words animal rights. I stated a moral principle in using those words, even though even now there's sincere debate over what animal rights are and what their scope is. But whatever they are and whatever their scope is, moral principle of animal rights began in the subsequent years in the US and ultimately abroad to acquire adherence. It's what some people would call traction. But something was missing. What was missing? What was missing was that there was no distinct field of law that fostered, defended, protected, advanced, spread animal rights. There was nothing to implement animal rights. There was no organized body of animal law tying together all existing laws in a distinct, recognized category of law, like corporate and admiralty and tort and contract, etc. Butz against Jones, as Joyce just pointed out, was followed by the New York City Zoo case, where 3 things happened. A, they recognized standing. B, we raised animal rights as a moral concept. And C, we lost. Then came ISAR's animal rights law reporter, as again Joyce mentioned, and then ISAR's first national conference on animal law. After that came the Animal Legal Defense Fund, the Center for Animal Rights Studies, recently Brooks Institute. And of course, during those decades, there were many American lawyers who were out there in the trenches working for the establishment and the recognition of animal law. So as we celebrate here today, animal law is the front line for animal rights. You want to make or understand military analogies. It's recognized as a standalone field of law, not only in the United States, but in other countries as well. Just to skim the surface, look what's happened. Litigation, research, legislation, which is law, of course, education, conferences, radio, television, streaming, and much more, domestic and international. So while it may be redundant for me to say that I am honored to be honored, I am deeply, I'm touched, I'm grateful for Cal's recognition of my contribution to making animal law what it is today and what it will be in the future. So I accept gladly, but not just for me, but for those who came before and those who are fighting now and those who will be in the future. Now they have a potent weapon serving the cause of animal rights. That potent weapon is called animal law. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professors Holzer and Tischler, for, again, everything that you have done and continue to do for animals. We all know this movement wouldn't be where it is today without your tireless efforts. And thank you everyone for joining us for this part of the event. Now, we'd like to invite those who participated in and attended the very first conference back in 1981 to remain with us for a virtual reunion. Thank you.